Hello, Internet. Welcome here at Legacy. I'm glad that you're joining us. I must tell you that I'm excited. I'm excited because we got somebody here who was in the South African Police Force, the MAG, and he was also a dark unit member. He was in Kufut, and he was in the reaction units. Now, today we want to speak about the reaction units, Reactie MAG. And the reason for that is not a lot of people actually know what the reaction units were doing and what they were not doing, or the history. And it just happens here that the captain in front of me, Pienaar, he actually wrote a book about that as well. So he knows the history. So he's the man we want to speak to here at Legacy. Captain, welcome. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that you've taken the time. Want to say to all the policemen out there, we want your stories, guys. Please come and talk to us. Don't let these liberals and people, they tell their stories which are basically lies. And then because it's the only version, it stands, we have to counter them. And Legacy is the place where we counter them. So thank you, Point. We appreciate. Can I ask you, how did you end up in the old force?
It's a long story. I joined the South African Police in 1976 after I completed my matric. And after joining, I was working at the station as a student for a short while. And then in 1977, I went to the police college. And after my completing the basic training in the police college, I was transferred out to Gubabas on the Southwest African, South Africa, Botswana border. It's about 90 km from the border, where I was a policeman at the charge office. Which was rather funny is that the station commander was a Lieutenant Willie Fouchier, and in later years, our paths kept on crossing. In 1979, I went on patrol dog course at the dog school in Pretoria West and became a dog handler. And after completing the dog course, I was posted out to Windhoek in Southwest Africa, where I was a dog handler. Now, the dog unit there was rather small, with the most guys in Windhoek and 2 guys in Tsumeb. But the dog unit in Tsumeb closed down, and we were then operating mainly from Windhoek, where I picked up a lot of experience, in the sense that the dog unit, because it was a small unit, we had big officers, and the Windhoek Special Task Force, which later became known as the Swappel Task Force, shared our officers, and we were deployed with them if they needed us assistance on certain operations, to such an extent that they were thinking outside the box. And the idea came up with having a police dog jumping, parachuting with a dog out of an airplane. And I did the course. And then when Swappel started, things changed. And then I left Swappel and I moved to the dog unit in Durban. I had a choice, and I went to Durban because all the action was there. Now, being at the dog unit, also totally different experience, in the sense that I was speaking, I could speak a bit of German and I could speak Afrikaans. My English was not the best, and I ended up in Durban where everybody spoke English, which was somewhat of a disaster in the beginning, because the O's were cracking themselves up because I didn't understand the slang they were speaking. They would talk about their connections, and I understood a connection as something that was 2 things that were joined, and I couldn't understand what joints they were talking about. But anyway, it was a big joke for them. While I was at the dog unit, I did various other courses in the police, and I think this is where people don't understand a lot of things, is that in the police, after your basic training, you do other courses, and you progress. So you can do training for a few years if you put them all together. It's 3 months here, 2 months here, a month here. Anyway, so while I was at the dog unit, I then went up for stints at Kufut. I completed the police's tracker course, and Then in 1984, I had a big thing where there was an attack on the oil refinery in Durban, and I responded to the complaint, and I ended up boxing the TERS. It was MK TERS into an open piece of ground, just me and my dog, and a small gunfight broke out where they threw a hand grenade at me. My dog was shot to pieces, and but the dog survived. And after that, the dog was boarded from the police. But during that incident, it was the first time that I actually dealt seriously with the reaction unit number 9 in Durban. After a few years, I took a transfer from the dog unit to the reaction unit, where I became the second in command of the unit. And then later on, when I became an officer, I was appointed as the commanding officer of the unit, where I remained until I retired out of the police in 1997. And that is basically my career. Now I ended up in the unit. Okay, now to go on to the unit, I just want to just open up my little note here. Now, the reaction unit, where did the idea come from? In 1972, an SAA aircraft flying between Salisbury and Pretoria, or Jan Smuts, was hijacked. And it was flown to Malawi. And at that stage, the South African police had no capability of dealing with this. And the South African Railway Police were tasked to investigate this hijacking, and then they sorted it out. So, since the border war started in 1966, the police's training basically consisted of a military-type infantry training for going fighting in Rhodesia and on the Southwest Africa border. So there was no specialized training. And in 1975, David Potter took people hostage at the Israeli consulate in Johannesburg, the Fox Street siege. We took about 20 people hostage, and if I remember correctly, there were 84 people wounded because he fired out of the window, and 4 people were killed. Now, again, the SA police, they had no capability of dealing with this. And they actually called the army in to come and assist, and they deployed, and he eventually handed himself over. But there was no capability. And then the South African police sat down and they decided that they need a specialist group. And the South African Police Task Force was established in 1976. Now, that was also the year that we had the Soweto riots, and the police were also not very well prepared for the riots. And after the riots broke out, mobile platoons were established in all major centers. And in Durban, in Durban Central, they had a riot platoon, and the members of the riot platoons came from the various stations. So a guy would be allocated to a platoon, and he would go and do training once or twice a month, do some riot training, which was very basic. And then in 1979, the South African Police Head Office saw the light, and they saw that they needed specialist units all over the country, with the Special Task Force being situated in Pretoria, next to the college. And they had what they called task forces. You had a task force in Durban, you had a task force in Bloemfontein, Cape Town, and in Windhoek. Now, the district commandant or the district commissioners were tasked to establish these units, and in Durban, they went and they took the mobile unit or the riot unit to establish this unit, and they didn't have enough members. So they took members from the crime prevention unit of Essenwood Square, added them to the unit to have the strength of 36 members. But the members didn't actually have much training, and training was foreign for the police. In the police, they still believed that you should shoot one-handed and old style shooting. And now you've got a group of guys who were gonna run around, shoot two-handed, and just going crazy. And it was foreign. They didn't believe in that. So they didn't actually know what to do with the unit. And late in 1979, there was a captain of the SWAT, is later known as General Blackjack the SWAT of a task force. He and two other instructors came down to Durban, and this Durban task force was trained. But the task force objected to the use of the name Durban Task Force, and the name was changed to the Reaction Unit. With the various riot units all over the country, the unit became known as Reaction Unit number 9. Number 10 is in Cape Town, number 8 is in Pietermaritzburg, and so on. The unit was originally based in Durban City Centre, and then they moved to new offices at the Old Point Prison in Durban, which was actually a lovely place suitable for everything, where the unit had its own office. Now, what people don't understand is that the Reaction Unit was actually part of the riot unit. It was a unit within a unit, and people just couldn't understand that idea. We had our own recruiting system, we had our own budget, although we got our logistics from the riot unit. Training developed, the whole issue developed, and the training improved. And in 1987, the Reaction Unit was sent on a specialist training course presented by the task force in Pretoria, which was known as the Urban Terrorism Course. It was a very intensive course. Now, I have done a few tough courses in the police, and that was one of them. After completing the training, we were 24 members of the unit that went on this course. We went back to Durban, and then the unit developed, but some of the training, or it lost a lot of its older members. And in 1991, there was a seminar held, and it was decided that the whole reaction unit concept will be re-established throughout the whole South Africa, because a lot of the units had just simply faded away. And it was, yes, we're going to start again. And then the unit badge came up, and the unit badge, which is this one here, it was decided that that would become the national badge. And a complete retraining of everybody started, and that is the high risk idea came in. Instructors were sent. We had Colonel Saki van Rensburg from the task force that came, and he became the course leader and the whole person pushing this whole idea of getting their training done and getting all units up to par on the same standard of training. What was unique of Durban and its history is that the Reaction 9 in this period developed its own selection course. And Reaction Unit number 9, Durban, was one of the first units to have its Reaction Unit selection course approved by head office in Pretoria. To the extent that besides the budget for training, the commander of the unit was authorized to issue certificates on completion of the course. And that is what was a big thing for us. So that is basically how the whole Reaction idea came along. Maybe I can just add something that was a bit different, and that led to a lot of, let's say, issues in various reaction units. Because of the nature of the work, and manpower being drawn away from riot unit platoons into a reaction unit, a lot of commanders didn't, I'm talking about riot unit commanders, did not support the reaction idea, in the sense of having a bunch of guys, you have to give them vehicles, ammunition, firearms, and you got a bunch of guys running around like Rambos, shooting and going on. So they didn't actually like having this group around. But when the chips were down, because when there was MK terrorists being cornered in townships and things like that, this was the unit that had to go and sort it out. If there were bomb blasts and things like that, and I'm talking specifically about Durban, the reaction unit would go, cordon off the scene, and deal with it. We worked in the early years, we worked very closely with the security branch because we were basically an anti-terrorist unit. And in 92, with the changing in the politics, we moved over from being a purely anti-terrorist unit more over to being a SWAT team, where we assisted various other units. Now, the main tasks of the action was basically doing high-risk work, in the sense that anything that the normal policeman on the street was not trained to do, we were trained in doing house clearing. A fancy word for that is CQB, or close quarter battle. We just refer to it as house penetration. We became experts in that. Now, in reality, and in all the manuals, it says that the person inside the house has got a 75% chance of survival, and the person coming in has got 24%. So, you got this thing that you need special techniques and skills to get into a building. Now, this was not just purely for taking on terrorists, but merely for if we had to release hostages, and there were quite a few hostage release operations that were done by the Reaction Number 9 in Durban, which were like major stories. And then these skills were applied. Now, then we also had people that were trained medics. They were ops medics. We went for training by the SADF. Went to the one military hospital in Pretoria, where the guys got training. We had trained snipers. We were issued with sniper rifles, Sauer 300s and Musgrave Model 80s. That included silencers on the weapons. So these guys could also be deployed on various operations. We did, when we were doing VIP duties, looking after various presidents, the Queen of England, the American people. We had snipers deployed on buildings with spotters, the whole lot. Then we had divers. We had police divers in the unit, and these guys were also then deployed in searching for evidence or bodies where people were missing in the water, drowned, or washed away. When we had the floods in Natal, people were washed away, and we had to go look for them. Then the other skill that the unit had was mountaineering. Now, this was a double thing, because besides being able, or having the ability to rescue people that had fallen off mountains, down cliffs, etc., we also used this technique in house clearing operations, where we could come down the side of buildings or fast drive out of helicopters, or even where we used a rope rolled up in a bag attached to your leg, where you then jump out of the police helicopter and come down. So besides that, we also had guys that were skilled in tracking, where we had the trackers, where the guys could go and do trackers, the tracking during follow-ups. Now, that was not just for normal anti-terrorist stuff, but it was for crime as well. Get to a crime scene and start seeing what we could do. The various skills of the trackers all differed, but yes, it was a tool that could be used. And then besides that was the normal, we could also be deployed as a riot platoon, should it be needed during riots. So that was basically the reaction unit. Now, looking at reaction unit number 9 in Durban, the unit consisted of 36 men. And when we moved over to the point riot unit, we had the advantage of being one of, I think, only 2 units in the SA police that had our own indoor shooting range. There was an indoor shooting range, and we could train day and night. We just needed the key, go in and shoot. The offices we had our own offices that was totally secure. The unit consisted of 3 sections, three 12-man sections, and then you had the commanding officer, which was at the end, it was me. And we would have pages and our own exclusive or secluded channel. But later on, the right unit also started using the channel on the radio. And then we had a simplex channel. And equipment-wise, our main weapon was the Uzi. Now, when the South African Railway Police joined the SA Police, or they amalgamated, we took over a lot of Railway Police Uzis. And we were also trained in the R5 or the R4, because those were weapons that were coming into the police. Before that, we had the normal 7.62 R1. Things changed. Now we worked very close with one recce on the bluff in Durban, where we had equipment swapped and changed. We exchanged ideas, and they had a lovely little clamp that worked, where you could fit a maglite, a 2-cell maglite, underneath their R4s. And they actually borrowed us one, and we went and had copies made, and we had a workshop make us a box full of these things. And they fitted onto the R1, the Uzi, the shotgun. And if we really wanted to get fancy, we could fit a infrared lens onto the maglite, and with night vision equipment, we could then move inside buildings if electricity was cut, and you could adjust the bright spot on the maglite to, and where it shone, that is where your weapon would more or less shoot. So that would give you a little advantage. So we used that equipment. Then we also did some cross training with the recce's. Nothing of that was, I think, illegal or authorized. But we did a course on the Otis lifts, how to operate the Otis lift from inside, outside. That was a interesting course, as well as how to penetrate doors. And they got doors, the stacks of the doors that they used at the old whaling station, and we did a little course on that. To return the favor, we had them, or showed them some things that we did. We actually got an old Patco bus that was used, and we showed them some of the techniques of what we did in clearing buses. And that was parked on their shooting range, and they could play with that. Later, at the end more to the end of my career, the cooperation between us and the recce's was so great that on certain operations, they would send 2 operators with us to come and see how do we operate at night between the shacks doing house clearing, and the difficulties we had. So that was a good cooperation between the various units. Now, if I look at from a training point of view, in the reaction number 9, when we had the selection course, what would happen is members would apply to join the reaction unit. In that sense, I had a person in the form of General Tom Besaidnout. He was very impressed with our track record and our work ethics, and he supported us. And any person in the, let's say, the division could apply to join the reaction. We had 2 selection courses a year. When a person applied, he would then go and do a psychometric test. We had a good relationship with the police psychologists, and they assisted us with that. Then the people that didn't pass the psychometric test were weaned out. Now, when the selection course started, you had, or you could withdraw from the course at any stage. It was not, but you knew that if you came on selection course, you would be away from home. You are going to do training. You're going to sleep uncomfortable. We're going to keep you awake day and night until the course finishes. And normally they didn't know when the course ended, but it would normally take about, I'm not talking about the selection course alone, that was about 4 weeks. Now, for the training that we used, I think the best urban training center that there was the old whaling station at Wanreki in Durban. There were various old buildings. You could move in the buildings, you could shoot in the buildings, you could abseil from the buildings, you could bring in choppers, you could even approach it from the sea with the rubber ducks. So it was a perfect place. So we did our urban part of the training, we did it at the Recce base. From there, we moved over to what was Tongaat. The police had a training center there. It was an old quarry where we did more of a urban and then orientation type of thing, because we started, well, we redid all weapons training, etc. Once that was done, we went to a farm that was known as Four Seasons, because the weather changed so dramatically. In one day, you had all 4 seasons. Where we did more of a rural type of training. Now, once a candidate on the course, now there was a lot of physical training, because we were looking for the guy who had the guts to push through. We didn't want glory boys. You had to be able to do the job. Then, once the training was done, you completed your selection course. The last part of the course was a 3-day exercise known as fastbait, where the people or the course goers were given water to drink. They were given a lot of water because of Natal's humidity. People would dehydrate. And they had to operate. They had to do various physical stuff, and they didn't sleep, so that they could see that they could keep on operating for 3 days. They could function without sleep. They didn't get food to eat, and there were funny things done. There was a good mate of mine, one of the JP Willemse, went, and when he had the group, he would drive a police riot truck onto the beach in Durban at night and get it stuck to its diffs, and then the course goers would be given spades, and they had to dig it out. And it would take them the whole night to dig it out. And if they were too quick and they would get it out, he would go and he would drive into the sand again, and then they would have to dig it out. On the last morning, of course, they would be tired, the course goers. And we would go, it would be about 6 o'clock in the morning when the first KFC opened up. We would go and buy them a hamburger and a cold drink, and then in the meantime, have them doing PT on the beach in Durban, and then bring them to the office. And as they came around the wall, the guys would see all this food, and then they knew that they had passed the selection course. But that would only be phase 1. Once the selection course was completed, they had to start working the unit, and the guy had to prove to us that he really wanted to be there. Now, in the unit, it worked like that. People would come and they want to join because it looks like a bunch of glory boys, everything is okay, until the first member gets wounded. We had a few members that were wounded, and the moment the bullets start flying, some guys will say, well, this is not for me. I don't want to be there. And they were free to leave. Otherwise, we would evaluate people. I would get the sergeants coming to see me in the office, and we would discuss each member's progress, and then the member would ask, like, you are not meeting the standard, and you are being returned back to where you came from. Go back to your station. That was the agreement we had with the general. Members who were on the 3-month probation and excelled would then be awarded their reaction unit qualification badge. The badge had a number on the back as well as the member's initials and surname. Now, of course, I think just to bring you some insight into this before we talk about other stuff, is that getting the badge was a different thing. Now, we normally at the unit had the first Friday of every month after payday. That was Unit 9. So between 4 and 6 in the evening, everybody was compelled to attend this little function. And at the unit, we had now people who were on probation. They had to entertain the old mana. So they had to ensure that we didn't fall over or that we didn't drive. So they had to see that we get home safely. And they had to face the wives if you got home, because the wives would be up in arms about this lot. Anyway, so then we would like get these new members' badges. Now in Natal, you get a beer, which is a beer that the blacks loved. It is known as Ijuba. So you take the beer, and then we would put it in the sun, and it would mature even further. And it came in a square container, a square box. But by the end of the day, the box wasn't square anymore, it was round. Then we would open the box and put the member's badge inside. And then in the evening, as the party progressed, these guys were given all funny concoctions, and then they knew something was up. And they would do all funny stuff. But anyway, so then at the point, they would be lined up, go down on their haunches, and each one given his beer. And then they had to down the whole beer. And at the end, they would find the badge in the bottom. Then the member would stand up, give me his badge, and the whole unit would line up behind me. And this guys had to remove their shirts, and the badge would be smacked into their chest, into the flesh. And then at spots, it would be bleeding and things like that. But the guys would chuck. And then everybody would be taken home, some worse for wear. But they were then members of the reaction in number 9 Durban. Now, just to add to this is that the wives were not happy with this, because the guys got their badges and they got home wrecked. There's no ceremony to this. So I had a delegation of wives come to my office and protest the whole issue with me, and they were trying to push me in a corner. I said, okay, we'll discuss it. And then we decided to civilize the whole episode, where we would go and get into the police's ceremonial uniform. We had a formal night, and at this special evening, all certificates members had received for other courses they did would be handed over to them formally. The wives would be dressed in their evening wear, and then there would be like a cheese and wine exercise, and then the badges would be handed formally to the guy. But then the members in the unit were not happy about this, and they said, no, this doesn't work like this, because they weren't properly initiated into the unit. So a new plan was devised where the guys had their formal evening, and the next day they reported at the office. They were told that there was a mistake made on the badge. Give back the badge. And the badges were taken back, and the boxes of Juba were bought, and the badges chucked inside. And we went through the whole drill again. That was a bit more acceptable to the wife. So that was the selection course, and this selection course was adopted by the other reaction units in Natal, and that was the Durban reaction. Now, the unit started working, doing various operations. Now, before my time when I joined the unit, the biggest operation the unit did was a hostage situation in the game center in Durban CBD. It was 1982, if I remember correctly. December, Durban was full of holidaymakers, and a young man decided to take a female hostage. He had some mental issue inside the gun shop inside the game. Now, there was this gun shop inside the game center, and it had an armored safe door. So he took the female hostage inside, and it was the first major operation that the reaction number 9 did. Everybody was deployed to the shopping center, but there were various issues because of the armored door. Now, the gun shop itself had let's say, a sales section where all the display cabinets and things were, and then it had like a storeroom at the back. And this fellow with a female was moving up and down until the police arrived. And then he moved back to the storeroom. He had gone and he took empty boxes and he had placed them between the counters to slow any progress of the police. He was armed with a 357 Magnum revolver and a CZ75 pistol. Now, the first members deployed, and the guys in front of the door was a warrant officer, Tommy Stewart, and Jan Barnard. And they were looking at the situation, and Jan could look between the gap between the safe door and the door frame. You could peep through, and he could see the guy, and he was trying to work out whether he would be able to get his pistol barrel through this gap and actually fire a shot at this guy should the need arise. But it wasn't possible for him. And as the guy was back in the at the back, they had a sniper deployed. Sergeant Brett Cleaver was a sniper. Then he deployed, but he was lying between the racks, and he couldn't get in. And they were playing the music on the PA system louder to cover the noise the guys were making. Then they tried by having one of the members crawl down the air vent of the aircon. As he got there, but the wall where it went into the gun shop, it was sealed off with reinforced metal, so that wouldn't work either. Eventually, this thing went on for a few hours. The guy moved back into the storeroom. He was there peeping just around the corner, and the penetration team moved in. He saw them, and he demanded that the police withdraw, or he'll start shooting shoot the hostage. But not everybody withdrew. And Jan Barnard ended up right next to the door. And then he tried to show the female to keep quiet because she could see him, but she reacted, and the guy saw him. And then Jan stormed in, and he eventually, the man was eliminated. And it was a major story, and the first time the reaction actually applied its skills. Now, after that, the reaction unit was deployed a few times on request of the security branch, where we had to go and take on various MK, APLA, all these terrorist groupings. And the one operation was in Mlazi, south of Durban, where the team went, and it was a small penetration team that went. There was a group of, if I remember correctly, 3 terrorists armed inside the house. And as the team was taking up position, whether they were spotted by the terrorists, nobody knows. The terrorist stormed out the back door, and he just sprayed with bullets, just shot wildly. And as a luck or bad luck would have it, one of the members, Constable Freddie van Rooyen, got a glancing arrow on the side of his head, and he was injured. They had to fix it. He had got metal plate in his head and things like that. But that was it. In the ensuing gunfight, the terrorists were eliminated. But the whole plan was to arrest them, because what people don't understand is that if you have them, you can get information. It wasn't that we were going out just guns blazing. Anyway, so that operation didn't go down very well because we had one member injured. But that was not the first or the last. As time went on, again in Umlazi, we had information, or the security branch called us to say that there was a group of terrorists that they wanted to arrest. We had members holding observation the whole day to see what the movements were and whether they were there. And these terrorists were actually mowing the lawn and doing things like that. And the night it was decided that how we would go into the house and arrest these people. With various teams going in, getting a guy, handcuffing him, putting a bag over his head so he cannot identify anybody, and take him in separate vehicles to various places. That night around midnight, we moved into position. We used minibuses those days. Stopped. The team deployed. Myself, I was the senior member of the reaction unit that evening. I was in the corner. I was a corner team. And we had a front and a back door penetration team. And on the signal on the radios, we had the radios with earpieces. The guys penetrated. And we took down the doors. Guys went in. And these, again, they knew we were coming. And all hell broke loose. Amazingly, as I was standing on the corner, looking at the building, when I saw green, I first heard the shot, and I thought to myself, somebody must have fallen over something and had a flipping 80. And I was thinking about the reports I'm going to have to write and the explanation I have to going to get because of this. And then I saw guys moving out of the quite fast, coming out of the door, followed by green traces. Now I knew that we did not use green traces. So, and then all the shooting started. Then it came over the radio that one of my members had actually been shot through the nose. He was initially kind of pinned against the wall, but then the guys gave him some backing cover fire and he came out. And the fight was on. And shooting was going on. And eventually to stop this, because these guys were trained. They knew how to fight and they were putting up a big fight. And if they would take cover if we shot. And if we just stopped shooting, they would shoot back. And we decided, okay, well, to stop this whole thing, we had a hand grenade through the window into the one room. The hand grenade went off and it started burning. The part of the building started burning. But the fighting didn't stop. They kept on shooting. Then the fire inside the room died. Just the room burned. And then one of the tours got out the front door and he also sprayed again. And one of my guys got a shot on the head. He got wounded on the head. So we had now two guys down. And it became an issue. And I got annoyed with this whole thing because it didn't want. If we stop shooting, they start shooting. So okay, well, let's see who can outlast it. And I actually deployed a mag. It's a machine gun, a belt-fed machine gun. And I deployed the mag and we shot the door to pieces, enabled us to throw a hand grenade into the house. That was the idea, but it didn't. And at the end of the day, we actually had to physically penetrate the house to eliminate these guys. Now, the hand grenades we threw in didn't actually work because these guys had used the furniture, the lounge suite, to build barricades, and these were absorbing the shrapnel of the hand grenades. So it didn't work. So but anyway, so with two guys wounded, the fight came to an end, and nobody was arrested. So things moved on. There were a few other incidents. We had hostage situations. There was one in Melbourne where the husband and his wife, they were divorced, and they had a maid looking after the kids. The husband went to the house, knocked on the door, the maid opened the door, and he whacked her with an axe. She was seriously injured, and she made alarm, and he took the two kids hostage inside the house. Again, the reaction was deployed. We deployed snipers, various teams. Lieutenant Robbie Cook was the member in charge at that stage. And through all the negotiations, he wanted his wife to come inside the house because we all knew he wanted to kill her. Anyway, so that was not going to happen, although, you know, what the police say and what they do are two different things. So they had the wife there during the negotiations, and guys went to penetration. it wasn't like a penetration. They just really went to speak to him, and he handed over a knife, but he had a second knife hidden in the wash basin. And he let the kids go. And as the kids were safe, the wife was standing there. She was pushed to the back, and then he saw that, okay, he's been fooled because we were not going to give the hostage to him. And he grabbed the knife, stormed the guys, and then unfortunately he had to be shot in an ensuing gunfight. So that was a rather sad incident. But things progressed, and each time things got worse and worse and worse. You know, you go to court and you have to explain, you justify your actions in court, and the lawyers and the advocates, they get smarter and smarter. So as things progressed in 1992, I was formally appointed as the commander of the unit, and because of the change in politics, we had to change our focus, where we started working with various other units in the police. I just want to get my notes here, because this is quite an interesting lot. Oh yeah, before I move on to 1992, something that was rather interesting, or because that had a big impact on me personally, is that I was still at the dog unit in 1984. And I was attending a complaint that night on the bluff in Durban. Now, I preferred working alone because I rather got annoyed if my crew fell asleep in the vehicle. So me and my dog, we would operate alone at night. And then the complaint came in, and I went to the bluff. And then another complaint came through that there was an attack on the mobile oil refinery. And said, okay, well, they said RPGs were being fired from the bluff to the oil refinery. But I was close, and so I moved closer, and then on the radio, the bluff patrol van drove past these attackers, and they revved the police van, and they wounded one policeman in the face. And then they came, and the reaction at that stage had put up a roadblock. And as they came through the roadblock, they opened up on the policeman there through hand grenade, and two guys picked up a little bit of shrapnel. They got onto the N2 freeway, heading south, and by chance, a city police vehicle was attending to another complaint, and it was coming flying down the N2 with blue lights on. And these MK terrorists decided, well, they must have thought these guys were on them, and they opened up on the poor city police guy and revved the vehicle as well. And then they went off, and they went into Wentworth in Durban. But their vehicle was damaged in the shooting. And they jumped out of the vehicle. They left the RPG and some ammunition and stuff in the vehicle, and they ran. And that's when I arrived on the scene and jumped out with my police dog. Those days, you are young and you are fearless. So I went after this bunch. And there was a premises shop, and they ran into the shop, and I was some distance behind them. And the shop owner just said they jumped over the back. Went back, got in my police vehicle, and drove around the block. And there was an open field. There's a paint factory, open field, another industrial, was actually a building site, and then another open field. And I found the security guard, and I said, "Do you see anybody coming out here?" And he said, "No." And I took my police dog and went to the furthest bush, and I clipped the dog, and I said, "Sook." So the dog went, searched the area, and there was no reaction from the dog. So I got the dog, and I walked past this construction premises to the next open field. And there was a slight, from the roadside, there was like bricks and stone that were dumped there. And I went over that, and I clipped the dog loose, and I still had the torch in my hand. And I said, "Sook." And the dog took off. And I just heard him growl, and the next moment, all hell broke loose. And they opened up with AKs, and they were shooting at me and at the dog. I got rid of my torch very fast, and I took cover behind a brick. It was a bit of sand, and there was a brick. And but I just had my service pistol. Now, because I had done the reaction course, those days the policemen were normally issued with P38 pistols. I was issued with a Beretta 92. The problem is that the Beretta 92 magazine takes 15 rounds of ammunition, and we still use those combination holsters. And I could get the pistol in the holster, but I couldn't carry my spare magazine. So I only had one magazine with me. So I was shooting back, and it was a to and fro shooting. And then they threw a grenade, and the grenade landed on the wrong side of the brick. And just above my head, this lot exploded. I was covered in dust and leaves and everything else, but I wasn't injured. And at that stage, the reaction unit, one officer, I hope he was the commander then of the reaction unit, arrived on the scene, and the area was sealed off. Now, we had all these hand radios, and at that stage, when I was yelling contact over the radio control was busy sending police vehicles to go and attend other complaints. So it took some time for me to get through. And by the time help arrived, I was down to my last 5 bullets because I was counting them. In the ensuing gunfight that ensued, my dog then came out of the bush, but his whole right side was shot away. I got the dog in the first police car that I could get, put the dog inside, went to the vet, and then I was annoyed. So I stopped at home, collected my battle kit of the old days, and I returned. And we went into, we swept the bush where the dog was shot, and we found where they had dumped another bag of ammunition. And they had climbed over the wall, but there was blood marks on the wall as well. In the crossfire, the paint factory on the left that caught fire, there was a hell of a fire raging on the left because of all the paraffin and stuff. And then we had to sweep through I went with the reaction team, then sweeping through the right-hand side, this construction site, and then the TERS were hiding behind some scaffolding. And during the shooting, it is suspected that they were shooting, and one guy wanted to throw a hand grenade because all his fingers were shot off. A bullet must have caught him when he had a hand grenade in his hand, and the grenade actually landed between them, and it blew them all up. And so the fight was over. Right, the dog got a lot of attention. We were all praised. Damage to the oil refinery, there was some damage to it. They actually struck some of the oil tanks with RPGs, as well as some of these towers that they have. There was some damage there, but we came out of it. We had 3 policemen wounded, those in the roadblock, and the police van, and the police dog. So yeah, that was my end of my police dogs, because that was my last dog, Rover, and then I left, and after that I joined the reaction. Okay, back to 1992. Now, I'm now the commander of the unit. We go and we get all this sorted out. You see now, of course I forgot again. Something that was rather, because I just caught my little notes here. 1988. There was a mutiny at sea. We were the Durban boys, and there was a mutiny at sea. So the ship was registered in Malta. The captain, first officer, and radio operator were British, and the rest of the crew came from Ghana. They were towing a ship to be scrapped in Singapore, and they came around Durban, and you couldn't even see the ship. The crew mutineered because they didn't get paid. They weren't paid. Now, I mean, they're at sea. There's no shops there, so I don't know what they were upset about, but that was it. So we were mobilized to go and take on this ship. Now, just imagine. Now, it won't happen today the way it happened then. the old railway police boat, the Punk, came to the pier, and we jumped on. And then we had to wait because there were some of these Remington raiders that were sitting in the office that wanted to come along for the joyride. So they got on board, and we steamed out. Now, we were armed with our normal battle jackets and some shotguns, R1s those days, and pistols, and off we went. And as we got out of the harbor, we were escorted with 2 strike craft of the Navy. So now you must see this small armada approaching the ship. It was far because now I'm not a sea lover. And you look back and you couldn't see land anymore. So I knew you were flipping deep. But we had no life jackets on. We only had our battle jackets. So if you fell in the water, you were going to go down fast. It didn't bother us at that stage of the match. We got next to the tug eventually, which was like stationed there, like holding its position at sea. Now, what had happened is the crew, or the captain, first officer, and radio operator ran into the radio room and locked himself inside there. And that's how the call for help came out. We got next to the ship, and it was scraping against each other. And a penetration, a team, two-man team actually jumped over, as well as the Brigadier Brandt went over, and then another guy went over. So a 4-man team went up. Because when they saw us pulling in there, you got 2 warships plus this little wooden boat, they weren't ready for a fight. So they just stood there with their hands up. Went there, and now the negotiations were going on inside on the ship, and we were just there as backup, standing, and the sea was rough. It was a stormy weather. And then you would see people moving down, and they would go to the bow of the ship, remove false teeth, and they would feed the fish. They would be sick, and then they would come. And as the normal band in the unit went on, those were chirping. But anyway, long story short, eventually it was agreed the agents would pay the crew and things like that, and we withdrew back to Durban. So this was like something different. But I think it was the first mutiny at sea that was taken on by the police, even though we weren't that trained for it. But we got back to the base, got off the ship, and we went back to the unit. And our guns started rusting. We could not get these guns to stop rusting. You could put oil on it. It took us about a week of cleaning and cleaning and cleaning until the rusting would stop. But yeah, that was quite an interesting incident. Right, now back to 1992, well, for the third time. It was in February in 1992. We were at the unit. Now, at the unit, normally in the mornings, we would go for PT. Once we had a meeting, a briefing in the morning, the whole unit would go for PT. We would have a small contingent on standby. And because we were close to the Durban Harbour, people came running into the unit, and they just had a car driven off the pier into the sea. Now, we had diving equipment or divers in the unit, and the guys grabbed the equipment, and we jumped in the vehicles and sped off there. And a female had driven the car into the sea, but she came out. Then she told us that her daughter, or a little girl, is still in the vehicle. And there was my 2IC then, one of the Andre Broodryk. He swam out and with snorkel gear dove down to the vehicle. He got in the vehicle, got the child out, brought it to the surface, and once on the pier itself, we tried to resuscitate the kid. Now, things that really can frustrate a policeman is that we called for an ambulance, medical staff. Although I had ops medics and things like that, but I do believe that ambulance and things are better equipped for that. We called for an ambulance, and there was no support. The ambulance just didn't come. So the guys kept on trying to resuscitate the child, kept going. And then it came out that the mother had actually been sitting on the pier drinking. She wanted to commit suicide. And then she went and she reversed back and then drove over the side of the pier into the water with the child inside. Then she chickened out and she got out of the vehicle and she left the child behind. So yeah, so that had some effect on the guys. The guys were rather annoyed with her. And she would come and, oh, my child. And then the guy just said, go and sit in your ass there and just keep your mouth shut. We are busy now. It ended up that we actually loaded the kid into one of our vehicles. And Addington Hospital was about, as the crow flies, about 4 kilometers from where we were, where the incident happened. We took the kid there, and yeah, the guys were a bit emotional and they nearly ruffled up the hospital staff because the service was a bit slow. But the kid was dead. And that had a big impact on the guys because it was needless. In the ensuing court case, I think the mother got a suspended sentence for that, and it just thought, that was totally unnecessary. So yeah, that was a big thing for us. Then I think also 1992 was a rough year for us. 1992, another hostage situation developed at the Clark Gardens home. It was a home where the kids that were taken away by the courts, they were kept there. And what had happened is that the one father wanted these 2 children. So he went and he stole a .22 pistol from his father and went to the school. And he said he wanted to see the headmaster, walked into the headmaster's office, and when the headmaster opened up the door, he shot him at point blank range in the head, and he was dead. Then he turned around, and the secretary who jumped up, he shot her, but he wounded her through the neck. Now, from the police side, there was a lot of criticism. I'll explain why. Is that when this complaint came through, nobody mobilized the reaction to deal with it. That was the first thing. The police van that responded to the complaint walked into the reception at this home. They saw the they saw the suspect still standing with a firearm in his hand, and they couldn't decide who was going to take him on. So they moved out and they left him, and at that stage he had 2 hostages. We were then mobilized to say, go and attend to this. Got to the scene, cordoned off, deployed snipers, and in working out, now we used a simplex channel, but all police radios could go over to the simplex channel. And some policemen switched over to our channel because when we talk on the simplex channel, it's just us and we do not have any interference. And they were monitoring what we were doing. And as I was going, because now I had to try and negotiate with this guy until the negotiators arrived, I moved around and I spotted that there was a window at the back that was open to the office. And I told my guys on the radio, there is a window open. We might be able to sneak in from behind and take the guy from behind. But then the policemen went and they climbed over the fence to be able to see what was happening. And the guy heard them, and then he saw it, and he closed the window. So that opportunity was gone. I got to a phone, and I found him in the office trying to negotiate. And all he said is, I'm giving you 5 minutes. I want my 2 kids. I'm going to kill these people. I phoned back, and he would smack the phone down in my ear and things like that. And I said, I must try and talk. But yeah, and I kept on the radio, where's the negotiators? Because, I mean, these guys are properly trained for this, and it's not my field that. So I said, well, we're running out of time here. In case something happens, we must be able to react. And I got my penetration team in position, and I moved away from the telephone back to the front to see what was happening. And the hostage taker took one of the hostages and walked onto the grass with the pistol against the head to show that he was serious. And he was in such a position the snipers couldn't take him out because he was using as a shield. and then he went back into the building. And one hostage the hostage was able to get away from him, and she ran out. And she came out, got away from him. And he was annoyed, but the penetration team was ready in position in case something funny happened. And then he came out, he stormed out, he saw the penetration team, and then he banged off a few shots, and then he was eliminated. And that was a close thing, but that led to a lot of changes in Durban. At that stage, General Besaidnout visited the scene, and he said I must come and see him in his office for a debriefing. And I went to him and explained to him the problems that we had with other people on the scene. They were there and they screwed up the whole thing. And yes, it could have been done differently. And an instruction was given then in Durban that any member of the reaction unit that came on the scene, like a hostage situation, things like that, immaterial of his rank, and that some people took that rather bad, is to say that that member would be in command of that until more senior people arrive. That was to make things easier. So we also got, because we had issues with radios, we got new equipment and things like that. And then further in 1992, there was a guy called Sabu Mkhize. There is today a street in Durban named after him. Right, now Sabu Mkhize, his father was apparently killed by KwaZulu police. Now, Sabu Mkhize was linked to MK, but Sabu Mkhize was also a robber. Then he went, after his father was killed, he had killed 19 policemen. One of them being Warrant Officer Peter Knop of the dog unit in Durban. He shot Peter and his dog. Now, Sabu's weapon of choice was a Russian-made Stechkin machine pistol. Then in 1992, in the middle of the year, murder and robbery unit and the dog unit went to go and arrest Sabu. They found out that he was going to visit at the premises that his mother owned. He went to go and collect the rent. So the policemen arrived on the scene and a gunfight broke out. 2 dog handlers were wounded when they threw a hand grenade. Now, I mean, these are MK guys. They are trained and they got all the toys. So they threw a hand grenade and the guys got injured. And then they called us out. I had a sedan vehicle and I had 3 other members with me, and we sped to the scene. And when I got to the scene, we were standing on a hill looking down at, and the target house was pointed out to us, and you could see policemen around it. And myself and the constable Skonkmer went, and we said, okay, we're going to penetrate the house from the side, and we're going to start cleaning up the scene in the meantime. Sorry. And we went down, got to the house, the first house. Now, there were 2 houses on this premises, and the fighting was all around it. Got there, and I said, well, the easiest way to sort this thing out is we lob in a hand grenade, take out who is there, and then we go in. And I took the hand grenade M26 out of my webbing, and I undid the pin, and I was about to pull the pin when I saw Casper of the riot unit coming closer. And I said, wait. Because some of these robbers were shooting from behind a wall. There was a garden wall. So I said, wait, let's take away the cover. So we went back. I got into the Casper. The policeman couldn't drive it. He was so nervous. So I said, like, hop out, I'll take over. Jumped into the vehicle, and then I stormed the house. Now, I had a few policemen with me in the vehicle. Stormed down, there were 2 cars blocking the way, and I just ran them out of the way. Took out the wall with a Casper, and then I tried to get into the house through the wall. But the Casper's clutch was slipping at that stage, so I couldn't get enough oomph to get through the wall. And then we had to jump out, and me and Dean went around, and we penetrated the house. And to our surprise, we found a family inside the house. husband, wife, and 2 children. And they, had we lobbed the grenade in, they would have got it. So yeah, luck was on our side. Anyway, with the wall knocked down, the cover was taken away from this group, and so Boom Keys was on the side of the house. He had a serious bullet wound through the head with his Techen, and the rest of the gang, they were lying all over the place in the so but we weren't sure if we got everybody, because there was still a second house, and the female was very annoyed with us, and she didn't want to open up the door. It had a security gate, a lock on it. We couldn't get through it, so we just smashed the big window and went through the window and searched the house. And for our efforts, she actually instituted a civil claim of about R1.5 million those days against me. That was thrown out of court. They were harboring these people. So that was Suboom Keys. And everybody was quite pleased, because this guy was number one in South Africa. The people were looking for him. But the funny part of this is that as I was busy ramming the wall, the press was on top of the hill with their zoom lenses, actually took a photograph as the Casper was hitting the building. So that was actually a funny thing. Then if we go past El Cebu, in 1993, another hostage situation developed where this man was upset with his ex-wife, and he took a kid hostage, his wife was hostage of his ex-wife, in a flat, and he had doused the whole floor carpet with petrol, and he took a bed lamp and he cut the wires, and he had the 2 wires, and he said that he would cause a spark and burn the whole lot down, and in that way kill them. So we went and we set up the teams, we deployed snipers, everything, and we had the negotiators there. There was a Major Neil Roux from the negotiating team. He was negotiating with this man to get the hostages free. Now, to improve the chances of getting these hostages, all these flats were more or less built the same. And the guys went and they practiced on a similar looking flat. Practice on it to penetrate the house and to free the hostage. We had the fire brigade on standby, and because of the petrol fumes inside the house, the fire brigade had deployed firemen with us with fire extinguishers that would take out the oxygen out of the air and thus prevent the fire. After a lot of negotiating, after quite a few hours, it was decided that the penetration teams will go in. And we had 2 teams. One was going to go through the window in the front, one was going to go through the side. And as the man was speaking to the negotiator grabbed his arm, pulled him to the window so they couldn't get to the wires, and he said, go. And the guys took down the window, this big, complete window, and the door, went inside, and at the same time, the fire brigade pumped this powder into the room. It was chaos inside. The guys couldn't see. And then the people, the penetration team came out, and they had arrested this man, came out with him, but they were like grey, full of this powder and dust. But the community was rather pleased with the work. They actually applauded the reaction after the operation. This man was charged, went to court, and then a year later, he caused maracas again, and he was shot by other policemen from the Wentworth police station when he attacked them again. So, yeah, that was a different incident. A big operation that we did in 1993 was Essenwood Road. And Essenwood Road became a decided case regarding police actions or shootings and the way the police deal with it. It was a normal day. We were going to do training at the recce base, where I'd already sent some of the guys with all the training equipment to the recce base. When I got the call from Murder and Robbery Unit that there was we had to be on the lookout for a specific vehicle that was going to be used in a robbery, and we were asked to seal off entrances to all the black townships. So I quickly briefed my team and deployed the guys. And as the guys were moving out in their vehicles, Murder and Robbery came back to me and said that they got new information. These guys were going to rob a bank at the shopping center in Essenwood Road. We moved to the scene, and there was a corner, a street corner, where we actually met the Murder and Robbery guys. And a briefing was done on the pavement there. Who goes where? They had spotted the vehicle that was parked in front of the bank, and the guys were still sitting inside the vehicle. The reaction team moved up, that were going to do the job, moved up to the vehicle in a classical L formation, with guys on the street side, on the side of the vehicle, and the guys at the back. As the guys were moving closer to the vehicle, an old lady parked I think was a Sierra. She still parked behind the vehicle, and one of the guys just told her, like, took her away, because she would, if anything happens, she would be in the crossfire. Got there, and then it was a panel van, but the sides were covered. They could see out the back and on the front of the cab. And a head popped up, and they saw that the police were on them. And all hell broke loose. They opened up from inside, and the reaction unit guys returned fire. And this is difficult to explain because it happened very quickly. This is like a few seconds and the fight's over. And as they were coming out of the sliding door of the minibus, they were falling to the ground. There were firearms between them, etc. That was the easy part. Went there, the murder and robbery guys went there, they got the firearms, and that was the gang. Then information came through that this was a bigger gang, and there was a second house that needed to be checked. So we jumped in our vehicles, left the scene, went to this house. At this house, we penetrated the house. We got nobody there, but we got F1 hand grenade and things like that. We returned back to the scene, and the press was lovely. I mean, we were the heroes of the day that morning. But that evening, there was articles in the press that we had executed them as a member of he was a state agent, said that he was watching us standing over these people and executing them. And the fight was on. Now, it must be remembered that these people were all linked to MK. They were bank robbers. And they had the toys to fight. And they shot, and we had merely defended ourselves. This ended up in a court case where I was in the witness box for nearly a week, where these lawyers that they had, advocate, really tried to take us apart. And the Divisional Commissioner of Natal, to try and prove the police's neutrality in this investigation, appointed a investigator from Holland and from France to come and question us. Now, this is where I took my hat off for General Besaidner, because he was like our godfather, and all he told me, just said, you guys do not speak to anybody anymore. We are appointing an advocate and a lawyer for you guys, because we just did our job. And after a hell of a lot of court cases, going to court, at the end of the day, it was found that the police actions were justifiable. So that was a positive on our side. It was also, the instruction then came out that in all future incidents that policemen involved in shootings were not required to make any statements to any investigating officer, immaterial of his rank and who he is. You just keep your mouth shut until you have got some legal opinion, and then you speak up and say what you did and explain yourself. So that was a scoop for us. Then also in 1993, We got information that there was an AK-47, a guy with an AK-47 in Cleveland's hostel. Now, Cleveland's hostel was a hotspot. You had ANC camps, you had IFP camps, and they regularly took each other on. So you had to be very careful on what you did there. We went with the guys that got the information. It was two normal policemen. They told us where the room was, which block it was in, and we moved in. And I just moved in. I took one 12-man section with me. We stopped at the back because there was a hole in the perimeter fence. So we approached the building from behind. It was late at night and early hours of the morning. We came down the hill, and they had these self-defense units deployed. And the self-defense unit, when they saw us coming down, they didn't know who we were. They opened up on us with bullets flying. And I just gave the command, return fire and storm the building and seal it off. Now, what we did is, we normally do is we put the two-man teams in the corner. It's only one staircase. It was, I think, a 3-story building. And on each floor, I would deploy 2 guys to seal off the floor. But we did it so quickly that we actually boxed these attackers in on the top floor. And they were actually boxed in on the toilets, the ablutions facilities on the building. And we started with only 12 guys. Now, nobody from the other hostels even lifted their heads because we were pissed off. And we started searching these buildings or these rooms. There was, like, I think, about 40 rooms that we searched, each one by one. And we started, and the amount of firearms and drugs and stuff we seized, just the 12 of us. To the extent that the guys, the corner teams, they would call us on the radio and say, listen, these others are dumping stuff out of the windows. They were throwing rifles, firearms, knives, spears, bags of dacha. It was flying out. But we got to the target room, went there, searched the room, got the AK-47, got the suspect as well. So it went down as one hell of a exercise. Yes, we fired off a few shots, shot a few holes in the walls and things like that. Nobody else was wounded, or nobody was wounded, and we got the suspects. And we got the SD unit that was shooting at us with their firearms, because they were cornered on the top. Then, 1995, South Africa is peaceful, but everybody is unbanned. And this was exactly on the 17th of January, 1995. I was called by a member of the old security branch to say that they've got information that there was going to be an attack on the Pine Parkade police station. Now, the Pine Parkade police station is in the center of Durban. It is like a small satellite police station. It doesn't have cells. It's just a charge office, the office for the commander, toilets, some little store, and that's it. But we were pushed for time. There wasn't time because they say the thing is coming down now. I actually went to Essenwood Square, had a meeting with the officer in charge. He gave me a quick briefing. In the meantime, I mobilized my men on the pager system that we used those days. And I instructed them, just bring my kit. I got them on the Durban Esplanade, and we actually sat on the pavement, and I used my pencil to draw our plan of attack, or how we're going to approach this thing. I drew it on the pavement. We parked our vehicles, and we actually moved on foot through the buildings in the Durban CBD. We gave a radio control instruction that no police vehicle must come into the CBD. They must either stand off at their police stations, but they mustn't come in there in case they come and see what's happening and they end up in a crossfire. We had set up around the police station in order to arrest these guys. 2 of my members, because I asked for volunteers, volunteered to wait inside the police station. Because the whole idea was, these guys are going to come into the police station, we are going to surprise them, and we're going to arrest them. When I got to the police station, I was an officer, and they were looking at me with big eyes, and we said, like, yes, problems. And we took them and we told them, go and wait or hide in the toilet. And you only come out if we call you. Otherwise, you stay put and just keep your heads down. My two members hid inside, behind the wall, inside the charge office. I had two stopper groups deployed, so that once these guys came in, they couldn't deploy. I myself and a member of the security branch went up onto the roof to act as early warning, and we sat there looking down. I had my battle jacket, my R5 with me, and we were waiting. And now it was said that this thing would happen 1 o'clock in the morning. And 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard the city hall's bells ring. And I was, we have been called out for these things before, and they were all lemon. So yeah, I was, and I thought to myself, am I going to keep the guys in position for the next half an hour before we withdraw? How long do you wait? Because this is now, if I withdraw too early and the guys come, then I'm going to be have a problem. So yeah, if we take too long, then the members are going to be upset with me because you knew it was a dud and whatever. So as I sat there, I saw these three people walking down the road. And the one in the middle was an Indian fellow, and he was carrying an AK-47 in front of him across his chest. And I couldn't believe it. He's openly walking down the street with AK. And we were looking down on them, and they moved. There was a ledge, and they moved underneath the ledge, and they did something there. And then I spotted them moving towards the charge office, and we had radios with earpieces, and I was telling the guys, they're on their way to the charge office. And the next moment, all hell broke loose. There was a hell of an explosion, and then bullets were flying all over the place. And then on the radios, heard they are running. And two people came running away from the charge office. One was wounded about 10 meters, 15 meters down the road. And the other one kept on, the one with the AK kept on running, shooting back. And he was caught in the shooting about 100 meters down the road. We then went down to the charge office. Now everything was like what the flipping hell went, because the whole thing was set up to arrest these guys. Walked in, and the guys, no, these guys, they didn't even enter the charge office. They threw an F1 hand grenade into the charge office first. And then they started shooting through the glass. And they, because of the way my stopper groups were set up, they were in the perfect position, and they just took these guys on. And two were killed, and one was wounded. And he was alive for about another week. And the funny part about this is that then things happened in the press, where the family of this Indian guy with the AK claimed that he was a journalist covering the story. I said, like, a journalist, now, was he writing with an AK or what? Because he was the guy with the AK. So, yeah, that was, and these were all members from APLA, because they spray painted onto the wall of the charge office. Before they attacked it, they sprayed there, Viva APLA. And I mean, APLA was just as bad or disbanded. And I think about 2 or 3 months before that, they said they were not going to fight anymore. They continued the negotiating table. So that was a funny one for the Pine Parkade. Then we had an incident, a hostage situation at the House of Delegates. Now, those days, this was in 1994. There was South Africa had a 3-chamber parliament system. They had the normal parliament, the House of Representatives, I think, and the House of Delegates. Now, the House of Delegates were the Indian contingent, and they had their offices or the building in Durban, close to the harbour. Anyway, so what happened there is a group of residents were unhappy about things, and they went into the building. They passed security. Nobody bothered them. They went up to the Minister of Housing's office, went inside there, and they started giving him, they argued with him. He went and he called the security. The security guard went up there. He was armed with a revolver, walked inside, and they disarmed him, and they took the revolver, and then they took everybody hostage, the minister included. So we were called out to sort out this mess. I deployed snipers on the building across, that they could look into the building, and they could see what was happening. They could give us feedback, but the building had armored glass. So the snipers couldn't shoot through it, but they could see what was happening. So at least we had an observation point. We had the negotiators busy. Now, the office inside was drywalling. Now, our observation team could inform us that they had barricaded the front door, the main office door, by pushing bookshelves and things in place. We went and deployed a penetration team. Now, we had the explosive guys come to us, and because it was drywalling, we had gone and rigged up cortex on the drywall, a big circle, so that when we blow the cortex, we will have a big entrance and we could get in and release the hostages. And I was speaking, and then the negotiator told me, no, it's no go, wait. And then he said, listen, I'm getting nowhere with these guys. It's getting dangerous, out inside. It's time for you guys to go. So got everybody in position, and we were eager to see how this thing is going to develop, with the door of the whole wall being blown away. And we were busy starting with a countdown. And the negotiator said, stop. And I said, stop. And he said, these people are going to surrender. And I said, okay, well, then they have to come out the first, like we had them, the first guy come out with carrying the finger, the revolver with on his finger by the trigger guard. And he came in, and then they looked and they saw, okay, we were ready for them, but they surrendered. And then they looked back, and they saw this cortex and explosive stuck to the wall, and they knew that they just sorted this one out in time. So yeah, that was an interesting one, but somehow you felt let down because you were all psyched up, ready to go, and about 3 seconds before taking down the wall, we had to stop. Then further in 1995, there was this cash pay masters. Now these guys transport money to banks. They supplied so that the cash pay masters were going to be robbed at Stanger. It was on the North Coast. I deployed the guys there, and we waited, and we actually held observation on these guys, and we saw it was a blue Golf coming. Blue Golf came, but it didn't come in and went away. And they said, okay, cancel operation. It's not on. And about a week later, said, these guys are coming back. And the blue Golf came, and now I deployed it. The team had been deployed. There was an open field right next to the building, and we had the guys in camo lying between the guys. You couldn't see anybody there. And I had 2 snipers deployed on top of a little hill. And the guys stopped there, and 2 males climbed out of the Golf, and they carried AKs. And they walked on the side of the building, and the idea was that they would take the people as they came to work, take them hostage until the guy with the safe key came, and then they would empty the safe or take as much as they can. So it was like, do you wait for them to take hostages, or do you stop it now? So the guys in the open field went to arrest the guy, and the guy with the AK, the guy in the front, opened up, and he was shot, and the second guy ran. The guy in the vehicle tried to cover his mates by trying to pull a shotgun out of and fire with the shotgun because he could see where the guys were. And his vehicle was shot out by the snipers. But the one man kept on running, and the snipers took a shot, and he was about 100 meters down the road when they got him. And after all the dust had settled, we went there, and the guy that ran away, he had an F1 hand grenade with him as well. So these guys were totally geared for the fight. And they were quite pleased that we had sort this little exercise out. Yes, unfortunately, couldn't arrest the guys. They were going to fight. So what do? You have to fight. This was also 1995. We had to attend a Kossatu rally in Umlazi, south of Durban. And we were merely deployed as backup in case the riot unit couldn't come right, and we with our specialized equipment could move in. And now how it works is that on the one side you had IFP, on the other side you had ANC, and they would take pot shots at each other. And if they couldn't find anything worthwhile to shoot at, they would shoot at the policeman because you were just there, so they would just take pot shots. And the funny part about that incident was not funny, it was rather flipping serious, is that they shot with a 303 and from the side, and they caught one of the officer Keith Lenz, with a 303 from the side, and the bullet went between his chest and his bulletproof. They shot him in the chest, and there was a BBC film crew basically right next to us filming this whole thing. What happened then was we were stuck in the middle, and it was an issue to get him out. No ambulance would come in because the shooting was quite wild at that stage. So we took him with a vehicle to the closest police station, which was Umlazi police station. And I went and called for the police helicopter that was flying around to do the casevac. At that stage, there was a guy, Glenn Peterson. He was one of the medics. Him and another. We had ops medics, and they were trying to patch Keith up and keep him as calm as possible. And the chopper refused to land. I explained to them that this guy's got a chest wound. We need to get him to the hospital, and they didn't want to. So now I've got a list of people that really are on my crap list, and there's a few of these people on there. Anyway. We took the our vehicles, and we drove through to Durban, St. Augustine's hospital, if I remember correctly. And as we were coming into Durban, we asked the city police to close down the roads. So we had a straight run through all the way to the hospital, where they could get to Keith and get him, because the blood was coming out of his mouth and things like that. And then we returned back to this ops room, and the pilot wouldn't come close to me. And that is where some senior officers were clearly making choices for their political police careers without even worrying about us. I mean, politics was important for them. They don't want to annoy those people who were going to be in charge or were in charge. Anyway. Interesting incident that happened. It was also in 1995. A lot of security companies went and they employed ex-MK members as security guards. These companies went and they armed these people with firearms, handguns in particular. And there were about 90 of these ex-MK guards that went, and they went on strike, and they kept the firearms. These guards then went to Berea railway station, and they congregated there, but nobody wanted to go and take them on because they were all armed. They had 90 firearms among them. We were called out to go and sort out this mess. Getting to the scene, now the Transnet those days, they went and they diverted the trains away from the platform where these guys were gathering. Now, in our favor was that because the station was much lower than the road, there was a very high concrete wall behind them. So they couldn't run up there. They couldn't come towards us either. They were scared to come towards us. So they could only go left and right along the railway track. So I went and I sealed that off, and I said to one of the spokesmen, I want to speak to him. I said, I want the firearms. You come and hand in those firearms with the ammunition. And he said, no, they won't. They'll shoot their way out. And I said, you fire one shot, and you're going to have a bloodbath here today. And he was like rather very, very clever little man. And to show them that I was serious, I had 2 mags, LMG machine guns, brought to the station, and I deployed 2 mags with belts, loaded, ready to go. And I said, okay, I'm giving you 5 minutes. And then we are coming forward. And if you fire one shot, we are not going to play games. They saw that this was serious, and then they said, okay, no, we surrender. We're not going to fight, because they saw that they were in a corner. And surprisingly, they came and we recovered every single firearm with the ammunition. They came in a long row, and to such an extent that the owner of the security company was actually sitting here with the clipboard and marking off the numbers of each of the firearms as they were handed in. So we recovered a lot. That was an interesting thing. Now, on the 1st of May 1995, we were doing VIP duties, escorting the then President Nelson Mandela as he visited various places. Now, for that exercise, he was going to be flown by helicopter to a rural area, and then he was going to go to Umlazi to attend the Kusatu rally. And we were the counter-attack team. We went to the Air Force base and flew with 2 Puma helicopters to the presidential house in Durban, where we landed. And he came out and he greeted my whole team and got into his helicopter. His helicopter took off first, we were second, and then we flew about an hour flying time to the next spot. We landed, made a circle, a defensive circle. His chopper landed, and then he went and attended this meeting. It was at school. Nothing funny about that. We've done that numerous times. He came back, got in the vehicle, in the aircraft. He took off, we took off, and now we were on our way to the Kusatu rally in Umlazi. It was held in a stadium. Now, once again, that is where Keith Lenz was shot. IFP is one side, ANC is on the other side. We came in, landed, and we went inside. Now, I was required as commander of the reaction to be with his number 1 bodyguard. And I remained there, stood behind him. And then a shooting started, where IFP was shooting from the hills into the stadium. And they were getting close to the podium. To such an extent that a man was shot basically in front of the podium. Now, as part of this exercise, I had a Nyala armored vehicle parked right behind the podium in case something goes wrong. And I had a driver, Rashi Geldnys, he was sitting inside the vehicle, ready to go. And then his number 1 protector went and said, like, listen, we're evacuating now. They cannot get to the helicopters because it is too dangerous. So in the armored vehicle. Now, I was on the radio. One of the key, Gavin Manning, was at the helicopters, and I told him on the radio, get to the Air Force base with the helicopters. We're not coming there. We're going out with the Nyala. And the helicopters took off vertically, and they got the hell out of there because bullets were flying all over the place. We had the presidential entourage into our Nyala with my whole team inside the Nyala. Now, the drill is that my concern is the president and not any of these accessories that were coming with. So I didn't have an issue with them. If they were hanging onto the bumper or what, The president inside closed the doors with his bodyguards, and off we went. Now, you must remember, we are using a simplex channel where we can talk to each other, or me and my team can talk to each other. Nobody else can hear us. We're not even talking to the police helicopter that was circling around. So off we go. In this armored vehicle, they can see we are driving out with the president, but nobody can talk to us. They do not know where we're going. We do not know what we're doing. Anyway, so there were some of these MK characters in their camouflage hanging on the side of the vehicle. They were literally hanging on these meshes, and I just said, I don't know who these guys are. They are not part of my security detail. I do not know them. Keep going. And when we slowed down, they would like get off. And eventually we were driving. And then I remembered, okay, because I could see the police helicopter. Maybe I should tell somebody what we were up to. So I went over to the helicopters channel and I said, look, we got the president. Everything is fine. We are on our way to the military base. So now we are driving just this one vehicle, but we're armed to the teeth, so nobody would take us on. There would be a hell of a fight. But the area that we are going through is like highly volatile. What we got through there, nobody even took notice of us. So this loud Casper, Nyala flying through, get to the airport, and as we get to the Air Force base, you've got nearly like a guard of honor of soldiers. So we're driving there, and on our way in the president was sitting right behind me. And I turned over to him and I said, like, would you mind posing for a photo with my team? And he said, no problem. And I got on the radio and I told the guys, boys, we're going to go have a group photo with the president. So, like, when we get there, just come line up there. And we proceeded and lined up, and we had photos taken. And now it must be remembered that everybody knows us as a previously anti-terrorist unit. And so now we're posing with a photo of the president that was once our enemy. So we had this photo taken. And about 3 weeks later, we had to escort him again. At that stage, we had this photograph enlarged, and everybody that was in the group had a photo. So I thought, okay, well, let's try and see if we can get this thing signed. So as an officer, I've wearing a battle jacket, got a rifle on my shoulder. I also wear a briefcase. I carry a briefcase. Went inside to his house, met the president before we moved out to the helicopter, and asked him if he wouldn't mind signing these photographs. And he said, no problem. He asked, would you like to have a cup of coffee? So I sat down and I was given a cup of coffee. And he went and he signed all the photographs. And then I asked, one of the guys, it was his mother's birthday, and he had the book that was written, Long Walk with Freedom, I think it's called. And he asked, like, when I asked the president to sign this. So I said, like, would you mind signing? He bought this book for his mother for her birthday. And then he went and he said, like, what's her name? So, okay. So I went on the radio and I called the guy and I said, look, what's your mother's name? And he told me, and I told him, like, this is the mother's name. And then he personalized the book and actually wrote there and signed it. And that was rather amazing. Like, I mean, you don't normally get a guy walking up to the president and asking to sign books. But anyway, that was done. That was all part of that exercise. Yeah, of course, I think that is about... it's not all of them, but that is Durban Reaction Unit. I mean, I left in 1997. I was the commander and I left. And that's it. I mean, I can still go on and on about operations, but no, there's a lot of things. So yeah, that is my story.
And what a fantastic story that was. And, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Pai. I wanted to ask you a few questions to explain to the people from outside. Why is there a need for a high-risk unit? But I think you answered that. I mean, really, South Africa policing is not the same as in Scotland Yard or France or wherever. I don't I remember in my time also when they started bringing in these people from overseas, flipping pommies there from Scotland Yard with their accents, and they knew nothing. And I recalled, I said to one, and I was respectful, but I said to one, I've seen you people before, and he says, where? And I said, well, in 1988, some of you arrived at the Pretoria Flying Squad where I was at that stage, and they were from the International Police Association. I don't know how legal it was for them to come, but they arrived. One was the inspector nogal of a terrorism branch or something. And we were standing there and we were armed. I mean, we had I always explain to people when I arrived at the flying squad, the first thing I saw was a XR6 windscreen hanging right in the front with 3 bullet holes through it. And I thought to myself, hello, we're exactly where we want to be. And we started with a P38 with 8-round magazines, as you know. 2 years later, we had Z88s with the 15-round magazines and an R4 or an R2 or an R5, whatever you wanted to have, you could have. And we needed those weapons. And so this wanker from Scotland Yard, he actually showed me a picture. He says, yeah, you see, I'm standing here, but if you look closely, you can see I'm wearing a tear gas grenade on his belt. And I just started, I couldn't stop laughing. I laughed for 2 days. These people have no flipping clue what they're talking about. That's why the police, the service, went down to the drains. Because in Africa, it's different. It is not the same. But I know there's hundreds of more stories. You're going to come back. Fine, there's no way you're not going to come back. But let me ask a few questions now. This unit of yours, the reaction unit, was it exclusively white or could black members also join?
We had any person could join. We did not take females, and I will explain why we did not take females. We had to go out. Sometimes we were called out late at night, and then we were away for a few days. At one stage, and I can prove that I've got all these diaries. For 3 months, we worked without a rest day. No overtime because we didn't ask for overtime. We enjoyed our job. If you had females with you, you had other logistical issues, separate ablution facilities and things like that. Then, if you have a unit where you have this bunch of young guys full of testosterone, and you have a female around there, you are going to pick up trouble because the guys are going to be chasing these women, and I'm going to have a headache sorting this out. So, for the simple reason, we did not take females. We took any other race, anybody, if you passed the selection course. There was, just an example, there was a guy, Bongani Tembe. I think he was the first black guy to come into the unit. In order for him, because it was a requirement, you had to swim, you'd be able to swim, we did the scuba diving and things like that. He had to pass that. And he went and he he went on stuff to teach him how to swim so that he could come on course. And he went and, part of the guys did all funny test. And we stood on the police boat and dove down without any bottles down to the bottom of the Durban Harbour and come up with sand in your hand to show that you actually touched the bottom. So, yes, he did it. The guys did it. And, yes, if you have a Zulu-speaking person in your midst, when you're working between Zulus, you can understand and things like that. So we had these people. But my thing was, if you make the standard, my job to release hostages, you must be able to shoot. If you cannot shoot, you are not going to make it. If you cannot work late at night, you're not going to make it. That was the way the unit worked. And so, yeah, we had all the races, but I had to meet the standard.
I want to play something on record here. The ugliest thing in the world that I've ever seen in my life is a female in decent police camouflage uniform. But I don't care what people say to me. She just doesn't belong to me. Now, all right, I'm old school. But now I'm going to get a few comments on that. So let me rather keep quiet here. But you wrote a book about it, right? Can you tell us about this book, please?
Yes, I wrote a book. The book's called The Bloodsoaked Soil. It was a project that I worked on for close to 30 years. It was about the history of the reaction unit in a bit more detail. What I did was I went and I made recordings with old previous commanders, members of the unit. I had it all on tape. Tell me their experience, and each guy's got a different point of view of each operation, what they experienced and things like that. And then I wrote a manuscript, and I had a manuscript at our reunion, and the guy said, "Okay, now publish it." And I said, "Yes, I will. I will." And I never got around to that. I always thought, no, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, and things like that. And then about 2 years ago, the guy started to say, like, come on now, you're getting old, get this thing out now. And I went and I had the book published, but the book was published in a limited number. We only had 150 published to the guys in the unit. Although there are already books out, a lot of people, when they heard about the book, went and they bought the book. Some books were sent overseas and things like that. So yeah, it was done, and the positive feedback I got from outside people, not members in the unit, were very positive about the book. It's just about what we did, because if you go and look on the police's website, the current SAPS police website, there is not a single thing said about stuff that was done by the South African policemen in the early years. I mean, you can say, yeah, but they did a lot of bad things. Not everything that they did was wrong. You had policemen getting the police cross for bravery, for saving people out of buildings, out of cars in difficult situations, where policemen did wonderful work. You have detectives that did brilliant work in certain cases. If you go look at the shooting at, I think it was Ellis Park, where they shot a guy fired off a rifle and wounded a guy in the stadium. Those type of cases are being, there's not a word about that. And these are things that policemen did. There were a lot of guys that were doing their work. We were not in control of the political situation, but we did our work. So, and that is my stance on that.
Yeah, that is true. What I always say to people is, and now I'm going to shock people, I actually wrote about it in one of my books. The riot unit, what's the difference? And I will give you an answer. What is the difference between a riot unit section and a counterinsurgency section? And I'll tell you what. At one stage, both of them were wearing a camouflage uniform. That also stopped for a riot unit because it was too, what's the word, warlike or some crap from the politicians. And a funny thing which I've seen in Tokoza is they never shoot at a camo Casper. They shoot the hell out of a yellow Casper, but never a camo Casper. When people say to me, but Kwesi, they can't see it, man, it's camo. No bullshit, they could see it. They just wasn't shooting at it. That I saw with my own eyes. If you wanted some adventure in life, 1991, 92, just drive through Tokoza and see what happens. See what happens. There was a civil war going on, guys. That's what I'm trying to say to you. But to get back to my question, what's the difference? Look at the weapons. The one side on the riot unit is impossible for them to kill anybody because they're having birdshot in shotguns, while the other side have LMGs in the form of a mag, which I loved. I carried that thing myself. I had actually one in my flying squad's guard boot. I can tell you, sir, you get out at a drunk gathering of people with an LMG, they jump to attention and say, Sergeant, this is over. It stops right there. But in all seriousness, the one had shotguns, the other one had R1s. One can only kill and one cannot kill. So all these stories which they keep on telling that the police has went out and committed murders and did all sorts of things, unless you have faced the murder and robbery detectives because you've shot somebody. And even if you're cleared afterwards, you will not understand the stress you go through. There was huge investigations every time a shot is fired. And I can believe as a commander of a reaction unit, that must have been even worse.
I think a lot of people don't understand when a policeman, and I'm talking about any policeman, when a policeman used a firearm, that was investigated, and a duty officer had to come out and investigate the shooting. Whether you had to justify the shooting. Now, what the people don't understand is that you were issued for ammunition. You were issued ammunition that was on your 108. You had to stand yearly parade inspections. Every year, the police came to inspect to see whether you still have your allotted ammunition. If you didn't have, you had to explain, and that could even lead to a disciplinary hearing against you. That was the police. Now you come and you use a firearm. In terms, you had to explain in terms of what act did you act. Now, those days we still had Section 49.2 that was applicable. So, what did you do? Did you justify, or can you justify the use of your firearm? Then, if you killed somebody, I'm not even talking about if you killed somebody, you had to go and appear if there was an inquest held. And in the inquest, the family of the deceased can come and they can make representations, they can bring evidence and things like that. And you can end up being charged for murder if you. And that was a big thing because in those days, if you got suspended for something like that, you would be suspended, and it not just not having or will have an impact on your finances. If you were promoted or due for promotion, that would, because it happened to me. I was involved in shootings, and I could not be promoted until I got cleared to see that I was not guilty of any offense. And that is what people did not understand. But of course, now, so something else while you were talking about people that did not understand things. This happened in also in 1995. Now you must remember the ANC had just come to power in South Africa, and there were a lot of guns floating around. AK-47s, you could pick them up for 50 rand. We received one night. We received information, and we went and we saw the vehicle, which they said there were firearms in the vehicle. I went up to that vehicle. It was late at night. We sneaked up to the vehicle, and when I looked in the back of the vehicle, underneath a false bottom, I could see the barrel of an AK sticking out. So we withdrew and we waited for these guys. Next morning, these guys came. When they got into the vehicle, we jumped them. No shooting, no nothing, like people always think we kill everybody. And then we went and we took a grinder, and I can show you footage on that. And we cut open this vehicle. And inside this vehicle, we got close to, I think it was 25 AK-47s that were being smuggled into the country, and they came from Mozambique. They even had Portuguese labels that came from the police on these firearms. A lot of magazines, ammunition, and then as well as pistols. Now, these are all firearms that were flooded. I mean, we got one vehicle. This vehicle had a false compartment built specially for it. How many did we not get? And these firearms are all in there. And now these guys come and they take on the policeman. Your normal policeman driving a police van is not trained in all they do not have all the skills to defend themselves. They get, and they are easy targets, and they get ambushed if they try and take these people on. So, I mean, these guns are there, and then you need people to be able to sort this out. But the people just never understood the amount of guns and the stuff that the normal policeman on the street had to sort out. I mean, what is the problem? He's going to go to the bank and he's going to rob R1 million. And he only has to fire one shot to get the policeman to fall back. And then they get away, and he will get away with R1 million. So what's it? They feel nothing for policeman's life. If you look at the amount of policemen that were killed in the 80s and 90s, it was a staggering amount. And how many of them were ambushed simply at night driving past just to get his firearm? To give you an example, of course, there was in 1994 dog handlers. There was actually that was caught on CCTV cameras. Dog handler stopped at the filling station and went to go. He got out of his car. He and his crew were there. The driver got out, went and washed his hands. And a man came running in from the side with a handgun as the policeman got back into his car and shot them just for their firearms. Point blank range, bang, bang, killed both policemen and took their firearms and left. So a life for a firearm, that is what it was. Because they use those firearms for crime, robberies and things like that. Sorry, of course. getting carried away again.
No, we're going to have more episodes. We're going to talk about this because I feel that people don't realize what the police were facing. But you know, you said something interesting, and then I'll leave it there. A while ago, we spoke to Colonel Dani Norkia. I'm sure you know him, the task force commander. And Colonel Norkia said to me a very strange thing. He said, Chris, I didn't think I was in great danger ever. And I thought to myself, wow, you're talking about a high-risk unit. These are the guys you call when you can't handle it on the street. And there's very little we thought we couldn't handle. So when they came, it was really, really something. And so I asked why. And he says, because I was surrounded by the highly trained men. I had my teams with me. You guys out on the street, you never had that. And that's fascinating to me that you said this without even knowing you said that. And that's very true. Because that was the problem we faced in the police. We would come back from the border where we faced the same risk as any other soldier there, perhaps even more. And then we walk into South Africa. And you become a target just because you're there. You attend any complaint where a guy has been drinking a bit with his mates and they get in a little of a punch up on a Friday night, or your time in Turkish or wherever. We're not really humans, we're students, do all sorts of strange things. You walk in there and suddenly they're the biggest mates and they all attack you. You wouldn't believe. Guy attacks his woman, his wife, whatever, common law, whatever. You give him a few slaps so that he understands life, a few kicks. Next moment he sees a witness against you. We were facing all sorts of fuck. And then besides that, excuse my language, you would walk into terrorists. We had at the Flying Scot one night shift, I think we shot 4 of them dead. Why? Because they were turning to bank robbing. I didn't know exactly why. I wish somebody from a security police or someone will come and tell me. I have my theories that suddenly these trained operatives, and they were trained. I give them a lot of respect. They were well trained. Suddenly they ran out of money or something and they started robbing banks. And we were walking into that daily.
If you go and look at the difference between the border war and war in the cities, the urban, in the border, on the border, if you had a contact, be it with a Casper or on foot or whatever, you were basically, you fought your dinners, and after that, it was over. Where in your urban environment, your enemy, although well trained, they got the arms, they got everything with them. They are hidden among the local population. They wear the same clothes. They do not wear uniforms, anything like that. And then they look for opportunities. If you look at the robberies that they were committing, I mean, they were planning armed robbery the same way they would plan a sabotage attack. They were using the same skills, the planning, the reconnaissance, and they had the logistics. And they would go and they would carry out these attacks. Where you would have this guy would, from a combat point of view, were better trained than the normal policeman that came out of police college. If you go and think back of the training that you had in the police college taught you the laws, and they taught you the PT, and then how to use a firearm and your baton and things like that, and that was it. You were not taught to fight. You were there to attend to complaints and serve the community. Now you ran into flipping trained guys with AKs. They had enough armed ammunition, and the policemen were coming second. And you could not identify that. Then if you used your firearm, you still had to justify why you used your firearm. So you had your one hand behind your back.
Well, internet, we can carry on like this for a long time because there's a lot of things I remember from my own service years. And I can tell you, I don't think the police are actually getting the credit which they should get. And I'm so glad that Captain Pienaar actually came to us and that he told his stories and he's going to come back. Definitely, I'm going to invite him back. And other members, they can tell us what happened. It was a totally different life. I can tell you, there were people saying, yeah, don't want to go to the army, join the police. then you're stupid if you say that. We faced more contacts, if you call shootouts contacts, than I think that the army did. And these are fighting words, of course. But we had our fair share of, and more than fair share of battles going on. And it was always man to man, you know. It takes a certain kind of guts to go into a house where you know an armed terrorist is waiting for you. You have no support. There's no mortars. There's no Air Force. There's nothing. It's you. It is as close as he gets. It's as personal as he gets. And then you always had the law. And we were convinced that the law were not on our side. We were absolutely convinced that the law was actually designed to be against us. And a lot of policemen will agree with what I said here now, and that was a good thing. So what I'm trying to say to you is there is no such thing as the police in my time, and in the time of my guest, who can just go out and shoot people like willy-nilly, and he's going to get away with it. That's bullshit. It'll never happen like that. Never, ever. So thank you to all of you. Thank you for listening here. Especially a big thank you to my guest. And until we meet again, God bless.